and welcome to the studio. It's time for another demo, and today we're going to do something fun. We're going to be playing with color, and I'm going to paint some trees, a landscape, but I'm going to use an unexpected color. I'm actually going to paint the entire landscape with purple. And we should be able to get away with it because there's this idea that color gets the glory, but value does the work. And I'm going to put that to the test today. So come on closer to the easel and I'll show you what we're going to be working on today. Before we get started, I want to thank you for being here, for watching, for subscribing, for your likes and your comments. All of that helps this channel grow and allows me to share more with you. And also, before we get started, I want to encourage you guys to stay till the end of the video. It'll be about 30 minutes or so. I tend to paint fast, but I also find that I lose a lot of you around the 10-minute mark. And I think that's because the painting is in the ugly stage. And most of my paintings, I guess all of my paintings, go through the ugly stage. I call it the teenager stage. And we kind of have to coax it through till the end, and then it's not till the very end when I can pull it all together. So stick with me. It may look like a bunch of marks, but hopefully I'll pull it off in the end. All right, so let's have a look. Here is my reference photo, and what I did was a value thumbnail, because this is key. Because if value does the work but color gets the glory, we have to make sure we have a strong value map to begin with. Because what does value do? It allows us to create the form. If the darks are in the right place and the lights are in the right place, the middle values are in the right place, you'll get form, you'll get dimension. If it's all spotty, then it's going to look flat. Value also allows us to create depth, so things get lighter as they go into the distance typically. That's one thing that happens, so if we can do that, it doesn't matter what color it is, if it's the right value, it should work. And then value lets us play with color. So if the values are working, if we have a good strong value map to begin with, then we can throw any color we want at a subject and it should read as the subject no matter what the color. Color provides emotion, but value provides the structure and the form and does all the work behind the scenes. So I'm going to start with that value thumbnail. I also want to start by showing you the pastels that I'm going to be using for the painting. And what I did is I grabbed an assortment of purple pastels, and so I have an assortment of brands here and a variety of values from dark to light. I have warm purples, red violets, and cool purples, blue violets. So I have a range of value, a range of color temperature, but it's all within the overall purple family. I also pulled out a few hard pastels for those finishing touches for the grasses. I have Diane Townsend Soft Form, the purple set. These square ones are Jack Richeson. They're underpainting squares, but they're a nice soft pastel. And I have the famous Terry Ludwig Eggplant, which is a purple, but it's a nice dark. And so an assortment of Terry Ludwig and Diane Townsend for the most part. I'm working on a piece of Pastelmat. This is gray Pastelmat. It's a sanded paper. It feels smooth, but we really need to get a lot of we need to get several layers before we can start to have our colors start mixing and being able to move the pastel around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my value thumbnail and I'm going to block in all the big shapes by value. So my upright planes or the trees are a dark value. The sky is a light value. There's a little strip of water which I may or may not put in. We'll see. That's a light value, and we have middle dark value for our distant trees and a middle value for our flat planes in the foreground. So let's block in the overall dark shape of the tree. Now, yes, this tree is going to have some lighter values where it's catching some of the light, although it's not a really bright sunny day here. There's actually two trees together, one on top of the other, so I'm going to have to separate those somehow. We have our trunks. We want to make sure our trunks are not the same. I'm going to put in the structure of these trees by indicating where some of the branches are, the trunk and the branches. And I need to ground these trees by adding some dark upright, these are like little bushes under here. Here we have our smaller tree, and he's kind of leaning in to our big tree, trying to make an interesting composition, because that is also key to having success. And I'm going to connect these trees to my foreground so that they don't appear like they are floating. So there's my dark value. Now I want to block in the light value, and the light value is going to be the sky. So I'm going to use a light value, purple, and block in all of the light areas. I'm using the side of my pastel and using big broad strokes. I am going to add variety to both these dark areas and the light areas, but this is the initial block in. So I want to get my value map in place because it's going to be key. If my values are not working, then it'll be hard to tell what I'm painting, and the purple trees might look a little funny. We want them to work. I've started to put in some sky holes. I see that some of these are a little bit, well, a lot too big, but we can adjust that. Alright, so where else was there light? There was light where there was water. So there was a little stream running back there. I don't want this to be a worm shape, so I don't want it to kind of go across and create a fence. So I'm going to have to see where I can break that up. But so I have my darks, my lights, and now we have middle value. So we have a middle dark value, which will be the distant trees. I'm also picking a cooler blue for the distant trees, because that's going to help push them back. So, this is a blue violet, I meant to say cooler purple. There is the flat plane. There's two sections. Those are going to be a middle value. Let's just use a duller purple for the distance. Just also will help us kind of go back into the distance here. And then we have a middle value for our foreground grasses. So we're going to block. Oh, I had some upright bushes there that I just covered up. Let's bring those back. Alright, so where are we at? We have our initial block in of purple values. Darks, lights, middle, darks, middle, lights. And these are kind of close together, but it's enough to give me that value map. Now typically one of the things that I like to do is rub in this first layer so I have a nice soft, out of focus background. It's not as critical to do this when I'm working with a nice middle value gray tone paper such as this piece of Pastelmat, but I'm using a piece of packing foam that came in a package. It seemed to be nice and stiff, and it is working fairly well as a blending tool. I don't care if it's completely blended because, as I said, this middle value makes a really nice kind of tone that knits everything together. Now one thing that I'm going to have to be careful of as I see this is I don't want stripes. So I don't want this bit of trees to be the same size as this, the same size as the water, because that looks a little bit stripy and it would be not very interesting. So we're going to have to break that up. Alright, so we have a good value map in place. Now I can start to look at my photo and start to create the form and to create the depth. So I want to indicate where I feel the light is coming from. And while it's not a bright sunny day, we do have a feeling of light coming across so that from the upper right. So that'll help me provide a little bit more depth and form. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is reinforce the dark areas with a few other dark value pastels. Now, if this were a green tree, and I was being true to the local colors, I would pretty much be doing the same thing by blocking in unexpected color. But the difference would be that I would eventually end up with the local color, which is green, right? So I like to build up my color by value. So paying attention to the value of the object I'm painting and not worrying so much about the local color till the end of the painting. In this case, I'm not going to worry about the local color at all. We're going to stick with the unusual or unexpected color, which is purple trees. And we'll see if that's saying about value doing the work but color getting the glory actually holds true. I'm going to actually come in here and add just a touch of dark right along where the water is, just to give it a bank. Alright, so that's, now we have 2 layers of dark. Let's go for another layer of dark. And as I'm adding these darker areas, I'm trying to pay more attention to the shape of the trees, right? I want there to be interesting kind of pads of foliage. I was thinking about pulling the tree off the top of the paper, but I'm not sure if I like that. We can adjust that when we come work on the sky. But I want to have interesting shapes in the trees. So I don't want fingers. I have a little bit of a finger here, right? See, this one, and this one's all the same size. So let's add another one and break it up a little bit. Okay, where else did we have dark? We had some dark little bushy things at the base of the trees, and then the grass was dark in the foreground. So that is, we are on 3 layers of dark. I think that should do it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out some workable fixative. And normally I'm going to do this outside, not in my studio. But for the sake of expediency with the demo, I'm going to do it right in here. Now, why am I fixing the darks with fixative? I really want the darks to stay nice and dark, because as I add some lighter values, I want the darks to remain to provide that form or that structure. I am also going to do one more thing before I move on to the other values, and I'm going to take that Terry Ludwig eggplant. I call this the super dark, and wherever I feel like there's even darker areas, so at the base of the tree, for example, and this is a dark purple, but it's almost like a black on the left side of the trunks. And in some of the branches, I can get even a little more painterly with some of my marks. I'd rather have the branches in early like so, and then when I come with the other colors on top, I'm able to work around those branches. The location of the branches will also give me an idea of where to put those sky holes. So do the same thing for my little tree, and right there at the base to ground it. And I'm going to make a foundation pathway of super dark leading us to our bigger trees. So hopefully the idea is the eye is going to follow this really nice dark shape and then kind of pull us around to the tree. Alright, now I'm ready to add more layers and start to get the lighter values. Now typically I would work on the sky and work my way down, but I want to add a little bit more of a lighter value to the trees. But I don't want to go too fast to the lights. So I'm working in baby steps to gradually lighten the value. And I'm only doing it on the areas that I feel would be kissed by the light. So that little bit of a glow of the light. If I put it everywhere, if I put a lighter value everywhere, I'm going to lose that structure of the tree. If you hear the dog, I apologize, but there's 10 cats roaming the streets in our neighborhood, and she just can't help herself when they happen to walk by the window. And I'm adding a little bit of light to the right side. And so now we are starting to see a little bit more form to the tree. I'm going to go up one more notch and add a slightly lighter value. I'm also using a warmer red violet because I want these trees in the foreground to come forward, whereas I'm going to use a cooler blue or blue violet on the background trees. The trees are in the distance so that they'll recede. All right, okay, now I'm getting that form going in the trees. I think it's time to address the light or the sky. And so I've already put in one layer of light. This is a nice warm light. Let's see if I can get a cooler blue violet. This almost is very blue, and I feel like that might be, it might be a little too blue, and I don't want to cheat, right? And then somehow that blue got in there. Here's a kind of a grayed down red violet, which might really lend itself to this overcast feeling. So I'm going to use this pastel to kind of carve in and get some of those sky holes and make sure that my silhouette of the tree is interesting. So remember, we want an interesting shape, we want an interesting arrangement of foliage. And because the values are right, we can get away with using only purple. And these should look like trees. I need to go a little bit darker in value when I come in with the sky holes, because the foliage is obscuring some of the light, so it's you always want to go slightly darker in your sky holes. So I've got a purple that's a little bit darker. I am going to have to come in and revise some of these sky holes, but I like to put them in and then I can come back and either take them out or soften them. So it's kind of like a two-part process. Now, when the sky, here's a little bit of a, this will be interesting. This is a slightly darker purple, but I think it adds a little bit more interest to the sky, and it might help the sky holes. So, and then it's going to get a little bit lighter as we come near the horizon, like so. So one of the things that I'm going to do to the sky holes to help them is I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to just push them so that I'm giving a softer edge to them. I don't want them to look like Christmas ornaments, right? I want them to look like they're holes in the foliage and not stuck onto the tree. The other thing that I need to do is come back with some of that foliage and cover them up. And a lot of times what I also need to do is, to get more texture in the foliage, is come back and hit it with some more fixative. Gosh, this can. There we go. I haven't used it in a while. Alright, so we're going to let that dry and we're going to come back and revive some of the foliage that I have covered up the sky holes. So we've got our sky done. Now I'm going to work my way forward and I'm going to do my background trees. Now remember, one of my issues that I thought that was a potential issue was I had stripes, right? So I don't want stripes, so I'm going to actually pull these distant trees down a little bit further so I don't have this line. And I'm using a blue violet because it's a cooler, a little bit duller color, and it will work to create this illusion of depth. So cooler, lighter, duller, fuzzier. So I'm not going to put a lot of detail in those distant trees. And then we have our next layer, which is also a kind of a middle dark value. I have not gotten into my Diane Townsend's. Let's try. I'm going to put down my marks in a vertical way, fashion, just to lay it flat. And then I've got that water. I think I might like to hint at the water, which case I'm going to press quite hard. I'm making like a shouting mark, and I'm going to just have it kind of disappear behind that tree, so I don't have a very pale worm shape. It's just kind of a hint, a little bit deeper here, a little bit narrow, more narrow here, and then we can kind of maybe hint at some other bushes and such in the distance. so that we break up that potential problem of the stripes. I see there's an indication of maybe a little bit of reflection going on. I'm taking my finger and pulling that color down into the water to give that feeling of a reflection. All right, we're getting close. This fixative is dry, so I want to come back and redo some of the light on the tree. And look what has happened with the fixative, where I put it over and it got dark. Now when I come over with my pastel, it skips over the dark, and I get this kind of illusion of little leaf marks. So that's one of the things that the fixative does that is a interesting effect. I need to carve in some more of the light in the tree, in the lower portion of the tree, but this time, because what's behind it is the distant tree, I'm going to use the distant tree color to create the sky holes. They're not really sky, it's tree holes, I guess you can call it. All right, now let's move on to our foreground. We have some bush shapes here. I don't want to make them too light. Let's try this color. We haven't used this purple yet. And I just want to add a little bit of feeling of light on the right side of these little bushy areas, just to give it a little interest and variety. And I'm pulling my marks now in a vertical fashion, because now I can start to see the grasses and how they're actually, ooh, that's really light, how they're actually growing in the up and down fashion. Add some, like there's light on these grasses, kind of marshy grasses. And all right, now I've got everything covered. I've got all my values in place. Now we're at the home run, right? Now we have to put in those finishing marks. So I am going to take a break, step back, and come back with a fresh eye, and then we'll make those final marks. All right, I am back. It's always good to step away for a minute when you get to the point where you're not sure what else to do, and that way you can come back with a clear eye and figure it out. And the overall goal, of course, was to have a strong value map so that I could make the color purple read as a landscape without anyone questioning what it was. That was the goal. The other goal is I want to move the eye around the painting. So I want to invite you in, I want to show you around, pull you to different areas that have more clarity and more interest. So what there's starting to be some light on the grasses. I think I'm going to enhance that a little bit. Pull your eye up into this tree, so I need a little bit of light on the trunk. And then maybe push a little bit more light on the trees. Like, remember, I talked about going in baby steps, so I really don't want to push it too fast, but I think I could go up one more notch in value, maybe a tad lighter. Same with this tree here. And then maybe show just a few little leaf marks so that the power of suggestion will allow the viewer to understand that these are trees with leaves. I can break up a little bit more of the lighter area of the sky, and a little bit more detail in the grasses, and I'm going to call it done. So let's start with adding a little bit of a lighter value to our trees. This is a little bit lighter by a hair, but hopefully that's going to be just enough to give a little bit more form. And put some over here on the little guy. And then we want some leaf marks. Let's come back with this color, and I'm going to make just a few shouting marks. I call shouting marks when I press hard. Up until this point I've been whispering, meaning I've been using a light touch. And on the edges of our tree, I'm going to just make some little shouting leaf marks. And you can really see them where they come over into the, across the darker tree. Now this is the part of the painting where I can get carried away with leaves. And if you have that as a problem, be sure to look up my video on filiosis, which is a word I made up for painting too many leaves on a tree. And I give some tips on that. So I have to be really mindful of not getting too carried away with my leaf marks. It's really easy to do. But put in a few and let the viewer's eye kind of fill in the rest of the detail. Alright, I wanted a little bit of light on the edge of the trunk. So we'll just take a little bit of light, a lighter value. Remember, it's all about value. A little bit of a lighter value. And by the way, if you are interested in having more instruction or a refresher on the concept of value, what it is, what it does, how to use it, how to see it, I invite you to join us over on my Patreon group. And there are there's over 4 years of instruction there, but there's quite a few lessons on value and demos on value. So I'd love for you to join us. Alright, what else do we need to do? I wanted to lighten the sky just a hair at the horizon, just to give a little bit of brightening at the horizon, and maybe break up my distant tree shapes to make that a little bit more interesting. And over on the left side as well, maybe sneak a little bit of that light in between the tree. And I want softer edges there, so if I need to, I might have to go back with my distant tree color and soften it up a little bit. Alright, what else did I want to do? I wanted to work on the grasses, so I wanted to add a little bit more light to our grasses. But I want to do it in such a way that I preserve the dark areas. Because if I don't have the darks in place, right, then you're not going to see that transition. All about the value. So I'm going to actually reinforce the dark areas. And then I'm going to come in with the harder pastel and do some scribbly grass marks. This one's a little bit of a middle dark value purple. It's not showing up yet, but that's okay. We need some of that. And I like actually how some of the grass kind of comes up over the water, kind of hides the edge of the water, making it a little more interesting. And let's go in with that lighter. This is a light value red violet, and we're going to just hit the tops, the tips of those grasses leading from the foreground, so we can see that path of light leading us to the trees. And I want some kind of really loose scribbly marks, nice and free. And I think I need a little bit darker in this area, just so that we can kind of see that transition a little bit better. Maybe over here as well. Alright, I think I'm going to stop now. I think this is enough information to give me the idea that, yeah, value does the work and color certainly gets the glory, and there's no reason why we can't paint purple trees and purple grasses. Now the really fun part would be if I were to take this painting and then use this as the underpainting, and then actually come back on top of it with the local colors. So I want you to vote. In the comments, let me know, do you want me to take this painting and add local color and make it more representative of what's in the photo, or should I leave it as a purple painting? I'd love to hear from you, so let me know in the comments, and thanks for tuning in, and I will see you the next time I do a demo, or join me over on Patreon. We'd love to have you join our group, and thanks for watching.